evening, everybody.
Evening.
Thanks for coming in out of the rain. Welcome to the July 18th Board Business and Conference Meeting of School District of Haverford Township. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. The Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Regal, could you call the roll, please?
Dr. Alan Stuck.
Present.
Ms. Colleen Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Fleischer.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Ms. Mingy.
Here.
Mr. Cinto.
Here.
Ms. Wiedemann.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
Here. Doc Martin is representing us at the the Township Zoning Board meeting this evening, so that's why he's not present. No one is asked to speak in advance at tonight's meeting. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board? Okay, thank you. We have a great report that's been prepared by Public Citizens for Children and Youth titled Underwater, What's Sinking Families in Delaware County, and they didn't even know what the weather was going to be like this month. First item on our agenda, CB Development. Mr. Ken Matthews will give us an update on the Lynwood project and change order.
All right, thank you very much. So just give a real brief update what's going on. I'm sure if everybody's driven by, you can see things have really started to move now. A number of things are getting done. The sedimentation basin is being built up front. Pico's come in, done the temporary gas line we had to do. We had to get it out of the way for the new building. So that's refed to the existing Lynwood building. Started a lot of the sanitary underground line work. There's been the new temporary Pico power poles installed, so Pico will be out next week. We have to swap the power out, the permanent power to the existing Lynwood because the current power runs underneath the new building, so we have to get it out of the way. We've also started removing underneath the classroom wing. There's bad soil. We knew about it. It was planned for as part of the geotechnical report. So that is starting to be removed. It gets hauled off site and new structural fill gets brought in underneath that portion of the building. The gym and cafeteria area is actually already to grade to where the concrete slab is going to go. So that work will continue under the classroom wing. And then over the next month, you're going to see really the same things continue. You're not going to see anything coming out of the ground yet. All this underground work has to go on. We have to finish the sanitary line so we can tie in the existing building to get that sanitary line out of the way from underneath the new building structure. And then we should start foundations probably by mid-August, hopefully a little sooner, but right around then. So that will be really the next key milestone, because that starts driving the schedule to steel is the next major milestone after that we want to start in early November. So everybody, the guys have been great on site, so things are starting to move really well. So with that, we start the project, and we already have our first change order, which is not unexpected. It's going to happen. You know, we'll be back every month, and most likely there'll be a few changes that occur. So this first one was a result of, as we submitted for our MPDES permit, the county conservation comments on our plans, and that causes changes to the plans and updates them. So these changes occurred after the bids had already come in. So the architect issues a directive to the contractor that this formal change is occurring. They price it, we review it, and then we come here to recommend approval. So this change was basically comments to that. We had to add some piping. We had some additional concrete work. This is all stormwater management items for the erosion and sedimentation control. We had to put in a larger silt sock, and we have to build a baffle wall in the sedimentation basin. So all that came up to a little over $14,000, and we've reviewed it. It actually came in about $2,000 or $3,000 higher. You know, that's part of our review. We go through it with ourselves, the engineer. They had some screw-ups in the changes, make sure all the math is correct, or if there's something we disagree with. And so we got the change back down to this $14,000. So that's what we're here tonight to recommend approval of that. So that being said, if you have any questions about what's going on or the change order, happy to answer it.
When will it stop raining?
Cannot answer that.
So just again, on these change orders, it's not like the contractor can just go and make changes on their own. These
No.
things have to go through this process,
Correct.
and then they're approved before they can even make any change.
Well, so you have a few things. You have owner-directed changes. If we all decide that there's something that needs to be added to the project, this is considered almost an owner-directive change because if it's a township or government entity that says we have to do something different than what was on the plans, that's a change. There's unforeseen conditions. Today we encountered a whole pile of trees that were buried. So we have to remove them. Can't do anything about it. Nobody could have known about it. So that's another type change. And then sometimes there are going to be, the drawings are not perfect, so there will be things that may come up on the drawings where we'll review it, weigh out if it's a true change or not that the contractors owe, because it is a lump sum bid. So they're bidding what's on the document. So if there's an error on the documents, that could be a change. But they can't just go do something. To your point, we issue a directive, and that usually comes through the form of the architect. And we have different means contractually. If we disagree on costs, we can still direct them to do the work and then negotiate those costs. So there's a number of means to do that. But yes, the contractor can never just proceed with anything. And if they put something in incorrectly, then we force them to fix it at their expense.
So given that the weather is what it's been recently and that erosion is a problem or could be a problem at the site.
Sure.
So if we approve it this evening, what's the timeline for the contractor to then implement what's been approved in the change order?
Usually it's very quickly, but you did authorize the business manager to approve up to a certain amount because there are instances where, even like today, it's an unforeseen condition. They're literally digging right there. You can't just stop working. So there are instances that they can proceed with it. Generally, our goal is that if we know there's a change coming up, we want to get the cost in, get it to you, get it approved, and make sure it doesn't impact the schedule. So some of these items, they at least released the, some of this hasn't, most of this hasn't been done yet except for a little bit of the silt sock. But generally speaking, we want to try and just make sure they maintain the project schedule because that's the big risk. You don't want to push things out, so.
And could you just speak to the concept of the contingency that's been built into the budget to allow for some of, it's showing up as an extra cost, but
Sure.
It's not a change to the overall budget because of contingency?
No, absolutely. So when, as part of a budget, you build for the project, you build, whether it's, a renovation or this is a brand-new building, so there's less risk, so to speak. An existing building has a lot more unforeseen conditions to it. So as part of the project budget, you build in a contingency. It's a safety factor, a monetary safety factor, because we know there's going to be issues. Again, we don't hire perfect engineers and architects. There are going to be changes. And until we get out of the ground, that's usually the biggest risk to a project is getting out of the ground, which some of that we planned for, knowing that we had bad soil. But now, like today, we came across these trees and have to deal with it. Hopefully, we don't have too much more of that because we're not digging very deep on this project. So that contingency is there in place to pull money from to pay for these type of changes. And on this project, it's a little over $3 million, which, I think it's, 8 to 10%, which is normal.
Other questions from the board? Again, with schedule-wise, with the amount of rain we've been having, and any significant impact at this point?
No, I mean, it's caused, a little bit, today they wanted to do a little more earth moving, but that's the beauty of, they switched over and went to installing sanitary pipe work. So far, it's had a little impact, but, part of the schedule, you have to build in weather days. And in this area, there's, a lot of theories, but it's around 3 to 4 weather days a month that the contractors know and have to build into the schedule. So right now, it's not having any adverse impact.
So I guess that means it's not going to rain for the rest of the month now.
I hope so. I hope so.
Other questions or comments from the board? Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
We'll look forward
We'll
to
see you-
seeing you next time.
See you next month.
So moving forward, we anticipate that Ken will be here the second meeting of each month to provide you with an update, give you an opportunity to ask him questions about the project.
Next item on our agenda, board policies. Is that you, Mr. Parker?
Thank you. Not as exciting as school construction, but important all the same. So in our initiative to comprehensively go through the board policies and make revisions as necessary, we're bringing for your consideration tonight two second read policies, which the board considered at its June public meeting, and then two new policies for a first read. So beginning with 007, now called access to policies as opposed to its former name, which was distribution. We have now made the following addition to the policy since the board first saw this in its first read. And that change is simply to add language to the second paragraph of the policy to provide access to a computer for any township residents who might otherwise not have access to the policies online. I believe that was a board request at the first read, although I wasn't here. And so we have added that, and the remainder of the policy is as you saw it at the first read. So if there are questions, of course, be happy to. This policy is relatively straightforward. We're just changing the way the world works, and we no longer print and distribute huge policy manuals and try to keep track of all of them and update them. So we're doing it electronically, and so this policy describes that process. And if there are no questions or changes, we will bring it back to you for adoption at the August meeting.
Everybody good? Questions?
So thank you for adding in the part where we talk about having staff support people who might come in and need access to a computer. Just as they'll be directed to the website, I feel like we need an actor there, so like by appropriate staff, like who is directing them? During designated times to access the collective policies and will be directed to the website by appropriate staff. I just feel like you need a person or someone or something there to do the directing.
Right, and at this stage, I don't know that we have identified precisely who that would be, but frankly, we have always maintained a computer, I believe, in one of the front offices across from the reception area. Some of our offices have been reassigned for various purposes, but we intend to have probably the computer in that location and then someone in that area, or if that person is not available, we'll make sure that someone perhaps from an adjacent office, perhaps human resources, because we're close to that spot, we could go out and assist someone. But we thought it might not be a good idea to try to identify exactly who that would be, which staff member.
Well, I think if you just say by appropriate staff, that
By
can really mean
appropriate staff?
anyone. It doesn't need to be by person X or. So that's showing that there's probably someone who's trained or multiple people who might be of assistance in that situation.
Okay, so by appropriate staff to the end of that new language in paragraph 2.
That would be my suggestion.
That's fine. And so,
Any other questions, comments on this one?
and so we will make that change and then bring the policy back for adoption at the next meeting. All right. And then moving on to the second reading of the Family Medical Leave Act policies, one for each employee group. We have, since the first read, removed the gender-specific language from the early part of the policy as requested by the board. But the suggested revision to page 2 remains, and there are no other changes. And again, any questions or comments?
Would you be able,
Otherwise- I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Mr. Parker, would you be able to explain to the public, I guess, the impetus for this change?
Well, frankly, the conventional wisdom, and it's widely thought, that measuring the FMLA year for individual employees from the date of their first use of FMLA makes a lot more sense, that it's more equitable to both the employee and to the district, frankly, and easier to administer. In fact, those changes have already been negotiated into the collective bargaining agreements for our two largest groups, the HTEA and ESPA. And so this change is really consistent with those negotiated changes to those agreements.
Thank you.
And so we would intend to bring those three policies, although it's really one change, back for your adoption at the August meeting, first August meeting. And then moving on to the first reading of policy 138, now called Language Instruction Educational Program for English Learners. I'm presenting this policy for a first look, standing in for my colleague Jen Saxa, who has reviewed the proposed policy in light of new, or at least newly stated, federal and state guidelines, including new terminology and requirements that emanate from the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA. And while this looks like a comprehensive replacement policy, because you're not comparing it to the old policy, it has changed substantially due to the requirements of federal and state law. If Ms. Sachs were here, she would tell you that in form, it's a comprehensive replacement policy, but indeed the practices and services that the district offers in this area for English learners really are largely consistent. They will not change very much. To a large extent, this is a matter of new terminology and a few new requirements. So a couple of examples that I can point to, while certainly not being expert in this area. The former term, Limited English Proficiency Program, has been replaced by the term Language Instruction Education Program. And the term English Language Learner has been replaced by English Learner. And while these may seem like simple changes, when federal law and the state guidelines that reflect federal law change, all of our documents, all of our policies, and our terminology usage around the district needs to change also. And that's what has occurred here in many respects. In addition, new language is added to the authority section of the policy, outlining the specific requirements of the LIEP, the program, directing that it be evaluated annually in accordance with state and federal laws, regulations, and state guidelines, and ensuring that parents and guardians of EL students and staff working with EL students are notified regarding the evaluation results. So the new policy and the new ESSA laws do in fact reinforce the practices and evaluation processes that occur in this area, and this new policy obviously incorporates all of those requirements. And Ms. Saxa has reviewed it and is comfortable that this policy, the district can certainly comply with the policy as stated, frankly, because it's not a huge change. It's not very much of a change at all to the current practices. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions, but I know we have some experts on the board in this area, and so I'd invite members of the liaison group or other board members to comment or point out anything about the new policy that they'd like to point out. And if there are questions that you'd like me to take back, Ms. Saxa will be present for the second reading, certainly.
I just want to thank you for pointing out the change in terminology from limited English proficient, LEP, to English learner, because LEP really connotated a deficit perspective on students, whereas English learner it's more active, it's something that the student can do. So that is a big shift moving into ESSA, so thank you for pointing that out. Something else that is in this policy that I wanted to speak to is that ESL or ELD, as they're calling it now, English language development, is now considered a shared responsibility between the ESOL teacher and the non-ESOL teacher or the classroom teacher. So it's not just, oh, the ESOL teacher takes the student and they go work together. It's more of an integrated approach now to English language instruction. And this policy and federal law is now reflecting that English learners are entitled to instruction that embeds content and language, or language into content. So they're together. They're not something that's separate. So this, based on the student's individual needs, they get the support they need in English and academics together, and it is a shared responsibility. And this language really reflects more of an asset-based approach to that kind of instruction.
Are there any other questions or?
I have a comment that's less less focused on the actual policy itself, and just I think more of a cleanup comment. On the last page, there are some notes which seem to be more instructions for the drafting than meant to be included in the policy, and it just seems like those could be stricken.
Right, I think they will be deleted.
Okay.
In terms of just little semantic changes, in the first paragraph, the fourth line down, let's see, the language instruction educational program, LIEP, that meets the needs of its English, I would say its English learners, because when we say the needs of English learners broadly, we're not just meeting the needs of English learners, we're meeting the needs of the English learners who are here in our district, and those are very unique. So its or ours, or taking some ownership over the students.
Okay. So we'll look at, I'll speak to Ms. Saxon and look at making that change also.
And then on the next page, let's see, there's that list, that numbered list, so it goes to number 5, and then go 3 paragraphs down for that. It says the board may address L students and programs in the district's comprehensive planning process. I would say we have L students in our district, and I understand the population is growing. We've hired a teacher at the high school. I'd like for us to consider there saying the board must address L students and programs in our comprehensive planning.
How about shall?
Or shall.
And just to, because the public may be watching, the teacher, it was a retirement, so it's a replacement, and the person is at 1 class a day at the high school. So I didn't want people to think all of a sudden there was a full-time teacher 5 days a week at the high school.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments on this one?
Bring that back for a second read at the appropriate time, perhaps the next August meeting.
That was just an outburst, sorry.
I was just calling.
And that brings us to the second first read policy, 227, controlled substances. I'm presenting this policy, and it's also a comprehensive revision to the existing policy on behalf of what was an ad hoc committee to review policy 227. And I should at least give some credit where credit is due and tell you that the committee was comprised of professionals, parents, and administrators. Colleen Malzinski, middle school counselor, Jocelyn Drukas, social worker, Marie Williams, counselor at the high school, Kathleen McAndrews, social worker at the high school, Nancy Naylor, middle school counselor, Kevin Redding, who's both a parent and a Haverford Township police officer. Some good input from that source. Our high school principal, Pete Dunnigy, who is not with us tonight because he's on other district business in another venue. Dan Haran, middle school principal. Natalia Adelizi, former assistant high school principal, now one of our pupil services coordinators in this short time frame. Assistant high school principal Gary Moyer, who is also with us tonight and has agreed to address any questions that might arise to the extent that we can do that. And Neil Evans, our former interim director of pupil services. So that committee met, I don't know how many times, but apparently a lot of work went into drafting a rough draft policy, which was then submitted to the district solicitor's firm, Whistler Pearlstein. And the policy before you tonight for a first read is the result of that work. The part of the policy that I would like to highlight is that there's been a shift in, I think, in some respects from a set of student supports that used to be called the HEART program, and now I understand that that's replaced with the SAP program. Is that right, Gary? And that really has been occurring over time, so this policy really reflects practice and as it exists in the secondary schools, right? And of course, Dan, Gary, you can chime in and tell us anything you think is important to tell us on this first read, or Natalia. We have, I think, pared down the language of the policy and perhaps made it more digestible, and you will see a set of administrative regulations attached to the policy, which will flesh out the requirements of the policy. Again, the policy has been vetted by the district attorneys, and any questions that you might have, we'd be happy to try to address before we bring it back to you for a second read.
So the one question I had, so for a first offense, it said that the student will be suspended out of school for 10 school days. And then the second offense is also suspended out of school for 10 school days. And that just seems to me like the first offense to be suspended for 10 days seems a little extreme.
Well, again, I didn't draft that, but Gary, is there a reason why we jumped right to a 10-day response? Now, remember, you have to look at this in the context of the district discipline policy, right? And so it's almost
Right, that 10-day suspension is actually,
Can the community hear him if he's,
He is loud, but it might be good if you went to the podium, if you don't mind.
thank you.
the 10-day suspension is basically what's been happening lately. There's a hearing held after an initial suspension for an offense of the drug and alcohol policy after the third day. An assistant principal like myself can only suspend a student for 3 days. After that, a hearing has to be started with the building principal, who has the option to suspend for 10 days, up to 10 days. And for all intents and purposes, lately, the last few years, it has been 10 days has been the typical suspension.
Could the wording be up to 10 days? Because I'm also picturing like a fifth grader who came to school with his brother's joint in his backpack is different than a high school senior who has, so, and I feel like by saying it has to be 10 days, that's 10 days that a fifth grader might miss. Or I guess I would like the principals to have more discretion.
I agree with Colleen and Kim. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, Mr. Parker, to have a first offense 10 days and a second offense also 10 days.
I'm happy to take it back to the committee and to the principals to see what their response might be and bring those responses.
Is there, while we have you up there,
Sure.
the first offense, is there, within that first 3 days, is there any overtures or offers made about counseling for that student?
Typically, that's brought up with conversation with the parents. The offense triggers a parental, hopefully, meeting, at least a phone conference. And those kinds of subjects are brought up at that time, yes.
Little carrot and stick would be nice, right?
Correct. And I think that's included in the policy a little bit further on.
I'd be interested in hearing, in the list of controlled substances, which not everybody would have access to at this time, there are alcoholic beverages, drug paraphernalia, a whole list of things, but included in it is number 8 with prescription and non-prescription over-the-counter medications. And I'm curious, a student who had aches and pains, a headache in the morning, and didn't take the little Ziploc bag they have of 2 Tylenols to the nurse and is seen with Tylenol, like, is the way that this reads, that becomes a first offense and subject to the 10 days, which I'm curious what the committee, how they discerned the difference between this list of substances and the different situations that a student might.
Right. I don't believe that's a change in the policy that we have now. Maybe the 10 days is a change, but the over-the-counter medication suspension is not a change. I don't recall discussions of how much leeway that they were interested in providing the principals for something like that. Right now, we have discretion to make a decision based on someone who brought their allergy medication to school versus someone who brought a narcotic to school. I don't know whether the intent was to take that discretion away with this policy.
And where is the discretion in the policy?
It is not stated in the
It's not
policy.
stated.
Okay, so that's a practice that's not in the policy.
Appears to be.
It seems like a slippery slope, too. I mean,
I'd be interested in just hearing more about how that,
Whether some discretion can be built into the policy and the regulations.
right, I think there would be different factors, as Kim mentioned, the age of the student, the type of substance that it is, the quantity of it, things like that, that if there is a realm for discretion and
Like a range.
then, yeah, I think that would be helpful to have in the policy.
And I would say that it's certainly permissible and doable to add that discretion. I don't think it was the recommendation of the committee, and we will take it back and get responses from committee and in particular secondary administrators who I think deal with these things and other administrators. This doesn't just occur at the secondary level.
Just a comment, I think it's also important for us to make sure that we empower the administration to be able to separate students immediately for the safety of other students when that is necessary. So while I do think that we should always keep in mind that the well-being of the students is a priority and that we're here to help and nurture them as young people, we also need to make sure that we don't infringe on the ability for our administrators and our staff to be able to do what they need to. So I would hope as we continue to talk about this that we remember that that may be in their minds as well, so that they have the tools that they need to be able to do that when necessary for the safety of the other students too.
And I think that is the countervailing consideration that you're likely to hear about from the committee and the administrators, because they're looking for some bright line rules that they can enforce, and so that they don't have to explain why one person received one set of sanctions and another
Yeah,
slightly different.
that's the problem when
And
you
that-
get into a range, because then you're like, who gets the 3-day suspension? Who gets the 10-day? It just, my only question was maybe having like some kind of tier, like the first offense less than the second offense. I don't know. Just an idea.
I believe the second offense had an additional component as well, not just the 10 days. I believe there was another step, perhaps submission of the name to the superintendent for possible expulsion was an added feature of the second offense that was not included with the first offense.
20 missed days of school, it's a whole month that a student would miss. And so, and again, each situation's different, but I guess, to me, that's a concern, that they'd be separated for such a long time. So then to come back, are they able to come back and be successful?
Under definitions, number 9, I have a question. To my knowledge, that's not illegal anymore, thanks to the Farm Bill. Why did you include it? Or not you, but the committee?
Can you, which are we
CBD
talking about?
Products that contain hemp-derived CBD oil. And there are 2 kinds. There's isolate, which has no trace amounts of THC, and then there's full spectrum, which does have trace amounts of THC. But to my knowledge, neither are illegal anymore.
Right. We worked on the policy from, I believe it was October of last year. I'm not sure when that was added.
That was added by counsel to the district from Whistle Prusty.
Okay.
So I'll be happy to ask the question about remember, this is intended to encompass things that aren't necessarily illegal,
Got it.
right? I mean, there could be a lookalike substance that,
I'd love to read their guidance.
Are there age limits on CBD oil?
there was some provided.
Are there age limits, Ari?
I'm sorry?
To my knowledge, no, it's
Not like
unregulated.
tobacco or alcohol, where,
To my knowledge, it's unregulated and descheduled. It's a huge gray area. The FDA just had a massive hearing. Over 100 people spoke.
I'm still getting hung up on the non-prescription over-the-counter medications. Again, just for issues like headaches or, young women taking Midol at certain times. I don't know if there's some other way to pull that out of the language. I just would hate for this to be a punishable offense. To take a small dose of something that's going to get you through your day. That's,
There are, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a procedure in place where students and parents fill out the appropriate forms to allow them to be able to carry over-the-counter drugs as necessary
That's my
in
understanding.
in the district.
And that's registered with the school nurse and.
Correct. So those students who carry that over-the-counter drug for their use in that respect, according to the policy, would not be subject to this, if
I
they
think
follow
that-
the
Do
correct.
they carry them with them, Gary, or do they?
My understanding is
It's
they
a-
don't carry them with them. They drop them off to the nurse, and should they need them during the course of a school day, they would go to the nurse to
Right.
take their medication.
The thing they
But
can
regardless, that-
carry is
that
an
would be-
EpiPen or an asthma pump. But
Okay,
I think they're
correct.
the only 2 things students are allowed to register and carry on their own. The thing about the prescription drugs is, so today someone wakes up with a headache, but to send it in, you'd need a doctor's note saying that it's prescribed, and we're not going to go to the doctor so you can take a Advil. So they're not allowed to carry the medication on them. And they would have to have had a doctor's note. And so I guess you need more of a chronic condition to register it with the nurse.
Perhaps there could be some delineation between medications that are used for abuse purposes and those that are used for it's regular medical issues. I don't know. We didn't formally discuss that.
Can I ask about anabolic steroids? Do we test all children, I guess in the physical, that they all have to have before they try out for a team?
Not to my
Is that
knowledge.
tested?
Not to my knowledge. We included that language because it was included in language from the other half a dozen districts whose policies we studied. They all included them. And it came up at one point in the meeting, why are we doing this? Who uses steroids anymore? But it was felt that it was important that we include it.
By the way, thank you for standing and answering all these questions.
Yeah, did not expect
At the
this.
spur of the moment,
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
Good job, Gary, good job.
So if there's nothing else, all right, thank you.
Thanks,
So
Gary.
we will take these questions back to the committee and administrators and bring those responses back. So this one may not come back to you quite as soon, given the summer schedules, but we will provide that information and come back for a second read.
Mr. Parker, before we finish, I was just thinking of an alternative. You know how they, so like the individual packs of like Excedrin or whatever, like we have, if people came in with that, because then it's in like a sealed, like if I were a parent and I knew I had a kid who had headaches or needed Benadryl or something, but I could send them in with something that was clearly marked, not something in a baggie, which you wouldn't know what it is. I mean, I'm not saying that's the perfect answer, but is that a way that at least it's a marked individual serving, for the right way to put it, of the medication that students could carry, because it is something that they could take safely for whatever's going on that day. I know it's really specific, but
You can ask the folks on the committee that would be another question
Yeah.
to bring forward to them. They're
Okay.
the ones who live it day in.
Right.
So they're the best positioned to address it.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
So no?
But if you know you're being fed, you buy. And if I knew
Next item on our agenda is a transportation update. Mr. Ramplin, I've been on this board for 20 years. And
State of the fleet.
well, thank you, sir. I look forward to the state of the fleet every year.
As do I. It's a lot of fun. Transportation's it's a busy place. But before we start the state of the fleet, we'd like to take a few minutes and recognize some of our staff. We had 3 bus drivers compete this year again at the safety competition at Delaware County. Jim O'Toole, who took 2nd in the county. Jim, if you would come up.
You did, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you're.
And,
I hope so.
you stay up. This is for Jim O'Toole. Paul Smeltzer, who took 3rd in the county. Sharon Nay, who took 5th in the county, who's on vacation, so she won't be here today. And we had Joanne Cardarelli, who took 6th place in the county. The top 10 in the county are eligible to compete at the state level, and Jim O'Toole took 1st place in the state of Pennsylvania. So Jim will be representing all the school bus drivers for district-owned fleets in Austin, Texas, at the National School Bus Safety Competition.
All right.
Can you bring us back some barbecue?
Well, their first lunch is a barbecue, so we're very lucky to be in Texas and have a barbecue.
No, I told you I was going to Texas.
Oh, when you were there, yes.
I did
Yes.
tell you that.
He did. When he was on his way to Penn State, he said he was really on his way to Texas.
It's in the right direction. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Awesome.
thank you.
Congratulations. Paul? Congratulations.
Thank you. If I can just thank all the board. And Ms. Rucci and George for all the support that we get. George is gracious to help us out, and Angela and our new guy Kevin is helping us out. So I just want to thank everybody. It's not just me and Paul, it's a whole bunch of us getting together and trying to do this. And we did it, you know? So,
you did.
thank you.
Sure did.
Thank you.
Without your
Sure
support, we
Thank you.
can't.
Oh, well, yeah.
Anna's going to take a picture. Come on up too, George.
George, you have to be in the town.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, it's a point of pride for us.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim flies out at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hot.
Go get some rest.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
two things.
Have a
I mean,
great
how
time.
great is it that we have the best bus driver in the whole state of Pennsylvania working for Haverford?
Amazing.
We actually knew that.
And two, can you help us get more great bus drivers? Okay, because we need that too. So, thank you.
George, you should.
Good luck.
You should hang banners like they do for the.
Sports teams.
The sports teams,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I also like to also inform the board too, that our group of drivers also work with Lower Merion's group of drivers who compete in the Montgomery Bucksmont. And with Jim has worked in with Radnor. So it's really a group of the school districts practice together, not every day, but they have worked together this year and in the past, which really helps everybody. And it also adds to the relations between the different transportation departments in Montgomery and Delaware County, which is it's a great thing. Well, before we start the State of Fleet, I would like to introduce our new dispatcher who started with us this year. Kevin DePaul is here tonight. He's been a great addition to our staff and help to me. So we'll start the State of Fleet. This year we had 45 drivers who were accident-free, 47, let me clarify. We had 45 in 15-16, we had 47 in 16-17, 44 in 17-18, and 41 in 18-19. We had 11 staff members with perfect attendance. Now, as we all know, this year has been very challenging for the Transportation Department. We've been short-staffed. With Dr. Rushi's guidance, Mr. Parker, and our business manager, we have come up with a plan to help attract drivers. This has really been a 3-year process to get us to the point that we were at this year. And as we go through this, you'll get a little bit of understanding about how tough it was this year, and the parents and the students who children had longer rides because we just didn't have the staff to take them home. And they were very cooperative with us because they started hearing this 2 years ago. And we just never were able to catch up and get to where we needed. Community relations got us on Indeed. Dr. Rushi had high school students make signs that you see posted in the community. So if we look at last year, we had 1 new driver in the class for the start of school. We have 10 now. So it's a huge jump for us, and it's what we need. So Dr. Rushi's guidance, we're doing the things to attract people because we're all trying to pull from the same pool. So, Haverford's a great place to work. What are really, for a great place to work, you want to be $6, $7 less an hour, right? And that's a turning point for people. We also had 5 drivers retired during the year, which shortens it some more. So we finished the year off at 61 drivers. We had, if we take away the sick time from our 5 drivers, and 1 of our drivers passed, we take their sick time out of the equation. It works out to be 1,999.25, plus we had another 823.5 of AWP. So that's a daily average of 15 hours that we're replacing a day. So we had days where we had 14 people out, not one day, multiple days. And when you're covering, which you're going to see, the routes of 47, it's very difficult. Plus, we're going to be talking about our sports and field trips. So, it has been very challenging, and I really want to take the time and, thank our parents and students who made it easier for us and understanding what we were going through. We use our website for, we can communicate bus routes. We have a student awareness program. This year we're going to be offering what's called Parent Portal. replacement school bus passes, and go online and fill out a form, and we'll send them a bus pass back. And we try to get that done within the next business day. We have the transportation calendar for all of the schools we transport. We put up holiday and special runs that are posted, the middle school and high school bus parking assignments, so the students can go online and see a picture. My bus is going to be in this space. We have our transportation guidelines, the bus stop, stopping laws, and we also talk about our Twitter account.
George, are you going to say what the parent portal is?
Parent portal. Parent portal, we're doing a pilot program over our summer runs. And what that is parents can go online to their app store and download Edgelog Parent Portal. And they have two products, Parent Portal and Parent Portal Lite. We want Parent Portal. So they'll have an app on their phone, and they'll contact the transportation department if they're a non-pub or special education student, and they tell us their student's name and the date of birth, and we'll email them back with the student ID number. If they're in our district, it's really their power school number or the student ID and their date of birth, and they can just go on and get the app and put it on their phone without any intervention from the school district at all. So we have that on our website. Directions, it's pretty simple to do, and they'll have put a geo-fence in, which means a distance from the stop, and when that bus goes through it, it'll let them know when it comes in, it'll let them know when they drop off. The other nice feature of it is, as we get people, students, parents to register, we're able to communicate back. So if we have something on bus 5, anybody signed up for bus 5, route number, we can push a message out and they'll get a text alert on the phone. So what we're doing on Twitter, we can kind of now bring it down to the specific people that we're really trying to get. But they need to sign up. Last year, Radnor started their Where's the Bus, different brand name. In the beginning of the year, they had 77 people sign up immediately. They closed the year off with 977. And if you talk to their office staff, reduced phone calls, it was a big help. They don't know how they lived without it before. So we'll see how it, how it works out for us. I'm hoping for to be a positive for our parents and students to help them. As you know, Haverford Township has a lot of traffic. We have 2 bridges closed now. So come September, we're going to have delays because we can't move cars.
How's that Ardmore Avenue one going to affect your routes a lot?
It's affecting us now in the summer runs because of the additional traffic.
Yeah.
But how, in September, it'll probably be worse in the first couple weeks of school, and then things will settle down. Usually you find, once people find their way and they say, I need to stay out of Haverford Township, they're going to go around us. And we have some, use of the back roads. We will route some buses to different, which we started before when they talked about shutting Ardmore Avenue down.
Yeah.
If we look at Manoa Road, they shut that down, and we virtually had no phone calls. We changed some buses, but we had 23 routes that ran through that area. Yeah. It did affect some runs going into Chestnut Wall because of the additional traffic on Earlington Road. But it wasn't too bad. Okay. And so we'll just have to see how it plays out. Every year, Haverford Township, our times, it takes us longer to get through this town.
I think they've already adjusted the light on Darby at Ardmore Avenue to help traffic flow towards Radnor. Because I'm right there and affected mightily by this. Mm-hmm. It feels that way, but I'm not ready for September anytime soon, thanks to the bridge being out.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of traffic picks up in September. So today we have 4172 passenger buses that are diesel. We have 6 that are propane. We have 2 16 passengers that are diesel. We have 4 48 passenger diesel. We have 5 18 to 48 passengers that are propane. We have 8 wheelchair or lift buses that are diesel, and we have 2 that are propane. We have 2 activity buses. You see parked down in front of the high school. So we're still maintaining at 70 vehicles and transportation.
Is our percentage of propane vehicles, is that like where we want to be? We're trying to add to the propane whenever we can?
We will be adding, we'll have additional propane buses coming in this summer, so we'll be up to 16. So each year that we replace vehicles, we're either going to get propane or gasoline. We're going to move away out of the diesel engine. It just doesn't work for us. It's expensive to repair those systems for emissions, and those systems that are on those diesel engines are not on that propane engine. So and we can send a bus out for emission repairs, and we can be anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000. At one point, that's what we spent to rebuild an engine. We didn't rebuild anything except fix the emission. It's a lot of money. With regeneration, we regenerate in the bus lot most of the times because they don't reach temperature. So that's, the bus is sitting at high idle for 40 minutes to clean the filters. We don't get anything out of it. We get cleaner air, but we didn't transport anybody. We're burning fuel, which adds to the pollution. So going propane, it's lowering our footprint in the township along with Delaware County. It's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It's quieter, and the noise level inside the buses with the students also drops. So so far it's been a win-win. Out of the 13 buses, we've had 4 buses we replaced the fuel pumps on under warranty at no cost, which is great. Because when you look at the amount of miles these vehicles went, our diesel costs would have been 4 times what our repair costs have been for the propane. Yeah. So this year we transported 4,557 students. As you can tell, the number is down. When we get further, we'll come back to why you're seeing a bit of drop in the numbers. When we all know our population's increasing, why did we go down? This year, we started off the year with 54 routes. It would have been higher at that 55, 56, but once I built everything, I didn't have the staff to fill it, so we had to reduce. So we got it down to 54. By the time we finished the year, we were down to 47. And actually, the number would be 46 because we had a run. If we didn't have sports and we had enough drivers, then we ran the route. If we didn't have enough drivers, we shut it down automatically.
Or George drove.
Well, yeah, George drove too. We had 10 midday. We started off with 52 routes in September, and we ended up in the afternoon at 47. So in doing that, in the reduction, to get back to the numbers, we dropped automatically around 125 students off of the runs that weren't showing up, or what we call a hit or miss. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they weren't. And if they did show up and we didn't have their stop on there because of squeezing, the drivers knew where they would go and they would take them to their stop. So no one really increased their walking going home. But we were trying to make it as tight as we could for the amount of staff we had to cover it. Again, you got to remember that we had days of 14 people out. We didn't have 14 spare drivers. We had 61 covering 47. Additional service, so this year we had 650 sports or other trips. We had 212 field trips. 24 times we used the food truck for the band. We had 95 trips with the vans that you saw in front of the high school. And we used the maintenance car 9 times. Now, again, our trips are lower. As we all know, our fall was wet. Our spring was wet. So we really didn't do any sports in the month of March, dropping our number down. And I would look out that window and say, come on, rain.
George.
yeah. Because we just didn't know how we were going to cover it.
Going back one slide, you had 130 locations.
Yes.
Can you describe a location? Is that different schools?
Well,
Or that's not just bus stops, right? That's,
Now, it's schools plus programs. When I first started, we only went to schools. Now we do programs. A program could be a student going to Media Apartments, Newtown Towers. It could be for a work site through the DCIU. I classify that as a program because they're spending part of the day, or maybe they're there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're doing something else Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Or any day combination you can think of, that's what we're doing.
thanks.
So that's why you'll see location served or schools or programs. We do work with Lower Merion, Radnor, Upper Darby, and Wallingford Swarthmore in transporting our students. It works out really well for us, and not just us, but for the other school districts we're helping, because we're all going to the same places. So if we can eliminate one bus in a line that's out the property onto a road, we can get it in and out of there quicker, and then we'll meet someplace else, like Haverford High School or Radnor's school bus yard, and they'll meet us there, and we also meet them. So it works out really well for us. We really don't try to do anything that's going to add to a student riding time. We really do it to reduce student riding time, and it has helped us through the years. Staff training this year, we had defensive driving, special education training, recertification class, EpiPen certification, epilepsy and seizure training, drug and alcohol. We had Haverford Township Police come in and speak to our middle school and high school drivers. We had some aides also in there. We got so much out of it that we asked them to come to our transportation director meeting that's held at the DCIU, and Haverford Police came out and spoke to all the transportation directors in the county at that meeting. Because what happens here is the same thing that's happening someplace else. So we were going through something, Radnor's going through the same thing. So how can we work together and solve our problems and get the word out? So that was really great. TSA, you're like, what could the TSA be doing here? We're not flying airplanes. We don't have any ships that we're going to confiscate. The TSA came to us back in 2016 about security. Since 9/11, we've always had information coming back about protecting the school buses, know where they're at, make sure they're secure. In 2016, they walked in our door and asked, hey, we have this funding. We can come through and review what you have. We had a brand-new building, so we scored really well. So now they're coming back. They came out to the transportation meeting at the DCIU, spoke to the group, and say, we were at your place, yeah. So 3 days later, they're knocking at our door. So we went through the review policy again, and our score went up. We did do some of the improvements that they recommended back in 2016. They have some more policies that that they're able to bring to us and work with us. So we had one morning, they came in at night and put backpacks in the buses. And then the drivers would come in, check their bus. Who found them? Did they find, what did they do with them? Did you know what was inside that backpack? Because we're all at risk. So it's, we're trying to lower ours by working with the TSA. They stopped the drivers who had the bus, had a minute. Did you find anything? And we scored very well. They had a couple nice things to say to us about what they saw with our drivers and also the condition of the vehicles, mainly how clean they were. So now we move from that to a tabletop exercise, which is the one picture you see at the top. So they had different scenarios, and we had drivers and bus aides, the maintenance director, Haverford Township Police were here at the table. Kevin was also there. And on those scenarios, what would you do if this happened? So we ran through a couple. We had our driver trainers also in the audience, so they can see what was going on and the conversations, and how can we work that into our training. So, those things are going to take place. We have a back-to-school meeting in August every year. So now we're going to have the TSA come in and just wrap everything up for what the drivers saw with the round table, the backpacks, and, how can we keep ourselves secure? If you see something wrong, does it feel right? What do you do? How do you call? Who are you going to alert? We have more vehicles going through Haverford Township every day than the police have on their shifts. So, our drivers can see a lot of things, but they also can see changes in student behavior. So we also have that training going on as part of it, because that is also a change that you're seeing. So, if this student's been in one place for 3 or 4 months, why all of a sudden aren't we seeing that same? So what would you do with that? Well, we have what we call conduct reports, which we don't like that title. We have our staff talks to any school that we go to, and we'll relay that information. So that's also been involved in this TSA, because we're all in a community, and we have to work together and keep our students and our schools safe and our neighborhoods. So it's been very enlightening working with them both times. Any questions?
As a former elementary principal, I am, as you always know, your biggest fan. I will always, that first month of school, I think I like what Radner calls it, where's the bus? Mm-hmm. And many parents call often in the first week or first month of school trying to find out where the bus is. You have such a calm, cool way of keeping principals calm. Therefore, I can keep the parents calm. Mm-hmm. So I don't, I always say my secretary, the custodian, and George. That's how you run a great elementary school, just the mechanics of it. And I will always be your biggest fan. And Kevin, good luck. We wish you much good luck. Our tiny little community is crazy at 3:30 when elementary schools get out. And the bus is late, the bus is not late, the bus is in the wrong spot. So pick up your phone and help us out. Thank you, George, for everything you do.
Well, thank you for your kind words.
He also does an incredible job keeping parents calm as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We try.
We're always happy when they call you first.
Everybody's happy when they call us first, right? Well, a lot of times, we have students on the bus, on the elementaries. We're still taking them home, and the elementaries are done for the day. Right. So the parents have a hard time getting there. So, we're glad we're there. We're able to answer the phone and, find out where the kids are. Most of the time, they're in a program at the elementary schools. Everybody's got a hectic schedule today. But they're relieved when they find out, where their child is, yes. Which is good. We have a great staff of drivers and aides. They really take ownership of the students. And that's one thing that really makes us shine above some other places.
Absolutely, George. I wanted to comment. When I have an opportunity to stop by transportation, that is usually the highlight of that day. The camaraderie in the room, and the best part is if I get there and there are many drivers around. But to see how the drivers interact with one another and to hear them talk about, just as you said, their kids, what they know about them, how they care about them. You and your staff have created such a wonderful atmosphere in that department.
Yeah.
And your crew, those are the first people the kids see in the morning and the last in the afternoon. And we appreciate the great work that you do.
Thank you.
and they're a fun group.
We have a
You
great time in
can't leave there
transportation,
without
yeah.
laughing.
Yeah. We have fun every day. You know, it can be a very stressful job. So I've always looked at it, you don't need to come back to the office and find the stress there. You know, it's out on the road. We have, you know, if you look in the month of September, in 2 weeks' time, we got hit 4 times. We were standing still. 4 times. To me, we have students. I get very mad.
Passionate.
I spend a lot of time in transportation for the students, trying to, you know, do the best we can to get them home or to school as quickly as possible. So it really aggravates me when someone runs into us because they're on the phone, or the one was, I went down to pick a sandwich up. But the phones today are a huge challenge for our drivers. And these guys will tell you, every day, they're affected by a motorist on the phone.
Wow.
Every day. And we had, each year we averaged 25 court appearances where our drivers have rode up another vehicle running our 8-way lights. So it's an average of 25 that we're prosecuting. So that's not how many really go through. That's the ones that had a close call. That's the one that really ticked the driver off. So, you know, yay, good for them. Thank you, because it's keeping our kids safe. And we do have incidents where motorists or motorcycles come up on the right-hand side. That's where the door is. And the drivers alertly see it, pull the student back. We're very fortunate and have been with transportation with the staff we have. You know, you gave me kind words. I wouldn't get those kind words if I didn't have the staff that we have taking care of our kids. So that's who really make the transportation department. It's not me.
It's all of
It's all of you.
Is there a way that we can be helpful in having the community relearn or refresh their driving skills and the rules around buses?
Well, PennDOT usually puts something out in September when schools go back in session. We, like I said, on our website, we maintain the 8-way stopping rule. We have a video that Anna placed there during this last school year that was made by, I think, Ohio. But with little kids, and we thought, you know, this is really good. So we were allowed to put it on our site. I talk about it all the time, as much as I can, when asked, and, you know, sometimes they wish they didn't ask me. But, you know, people need to be aware that, you know, come September, we have 4,500 students standing at corners or a house stop. And we get phone calls from like, oh, you're picking this house stop up and it took 10 minutes. No, we're loading a wheelchair. But we have to use the 8-way lights. That's the law. We just can't pull up to the house and not turn them on. Anything else?
Thanks, George.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Our last agenda item is a communications update. Dr. Rushi?
Did I go the wrong way, Anna? No, there we are. Thanks. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Feinberg. You may recall sometime back, much earlier in the 18-19 school year, we spoke with the board about conducting a communications audit and asked for your permission to bring someone in who has expertise in that area to undertake that work. And that work was undertaken. And I'm just going to highlight for you some aspects of that report, which will be placed on our website tomorrow morning. So the full report is 31 pages. And I'm not going to go through all 31 pages this evening, just sort of highlight a few things for you. So we wanted, an overview. What is overview of the issues around communication? How do we best communicate? Sort of take a pulse of the community, and then to get some information that could provide a baseline data for us. What is people's perception about how they get information, how easy it is to get information, what type of information they want to know. So the scope of our audit that was conducted, first there was what you call like an artifact or almost document review, looking at our website and different publications that the district has produced over time. There were 12 focus group interview sessions that were conducted, starting different parent groups, elementary parents, secondary parents, various members of the staff throughout the district. There was a high school student focus group that was conducted as well. The data in terms of the respondents to the survey was generated after the focus group conversations. And then the survey was sent to all of our families, teachers, staff members in the district. And the differentiation between teachers and staff members would be anyone who is not certificated. All right, so the teachers would be all the certificated teachers. Administrators were a second group. Community members, we tried to reach people who do not have children in the schools. So that you'll see, we did not have a good response from that, but also the consultant with whom we were working said that is not unusual. We don't have the mechanism to reach individually without mailing information directly into people's homes. So within each group, the survey questions, the focus group conversations focused upon, I'm not going to read all of that to you, but perception, what things work well, how we can do better, how the level to which people feel informed about happenings in the district. What's the source of information? We could have said Facebook, and yes, it is a source of information that people seem to go to within the community to start sharing their own information there. And then there are some recommended changes and priorities suggested for us to look at for improvement. So a few things that we were reminded of, and you'll see this is written more in a summary component to the report. This is the first time that we've given parents sort of like the opportunity to vent a little bit. All right, we've surveyed parents, but it's usually our surveys to date have been very focused on one specific element of our work. It might be the survey of our English language arts curriculum that went out to parents, or the survey about our social studies curricula. This was more general, and people tended to interpret or define communication differently. So we got a lot of varied responses about things. So our consultant looks for patterns, not so much isolated comments, but patterns that can fall under what she would call themes, and then reminded us that there were many similar issues that she has seen in other districts as well. For us, internal communication should be was recommended as a priority area. And you'll see why as we move through the information that was shared. The results are not broken down school by school. That was going to get almost like too much into the weeds for the information really to be meaningful for us. And some of the survey results can appear, can really skew negative based on how the question was asked and how the surveys are issued. And our message to our administrative team, and we shared this with our administrative team yesterday, is each one of us, we all own a piece of the pie. We all have some degree of communication. We all interact with other colleagues in the district, people in the community. What's the message? What image do we portray of the district and what's happening there? So some key findings, things that were identified as strengths of the district, that overall, parents do feel informed about different events, different activities that are taking place in the district. Communication that comes from teachers is generally seen as very strong. There is a recommendation for how we can strengthen that even more so. In particular, our secretaries and staff who greet people in the buildings were noted as being very polite and welcoming when people come into the schools. That there's a sense that we are welcoming and looking at culture, different ethnic groups, learning styles, that our educators are people who are caring. People see me. There's a great deal of pride among all of the employee groups. It was almost the number one, rated number one in terms of the employee responses, in terms of the degree of pride that they feel in being associated with the school district of Haverford Township. So of course, then there are going to be some, key findings as well as strengths. We're looking to see what our growth areas can be. Excuse me. In the area of decision-making, feedback that we've gotten so far is employees want more involvement in the, excuse me, more involvement and inclusion in the decision-making process. So more of an explanation of why, thank you, why things are happening, and timely and proactive communication. As I mentioned earlier, we've already learned that internal communication is something that needs to be a focus. Our employees, and in addition, parent groups would like to be asked their opinion more frequently so that they can provide that. And that rumors are a significant source, a challenge to communication, and that we really should look to see what we can do to slow that down a little bit.
Where is that? Is that employees, parents, or both?
Both. Both. There, within our employees, a perceived divide in the communication between those who work in Oakmont and those who are out in the schools. And there's some basic need to know information about policy changes, procedural changes that employees want to have communicated to them in a more direct way. People would like to know more about the school board, and as we get in later on, about what's happening at meetings, an easier way to find the agenda, easier way to find out what has happened after the fact. Some staff and parents frustrated the variances, the differences, and while that's not going to be evident here, we know specifically from our conversations that's referring to the elementary level. So you've got 5 schools, and there are times when people love the fact that the 5 schools are different, and there are times that people wish the 5 schools would be more alike. Our greatest challenging is balancing the difference between the two, because the people who want things to be the same are not always necessarily the people who want things to be different. So that's something that we will take a look at. The elementary parents in particular talked about PTOs working more collaboratively to be able to share information. They referenced a number of times, the backpack. People now even refer to it as a law, which that is not. And it refers to the distribution of information. So it refers to businesses, organizations giving us information that we would then, in the past, send home with children. Now we post it on our website, and all groups are treated the same. And that's a very short summary of that matter. But the PTOs would like greater access to information. And all groups indicated that while the website redesign has been helpful, that it needs further refinement, and then look at, there might be some differences in how information is appearing on calendars, and can we get more consistent about that. So from there are recommendations. Now there's a list, there are about 14 different recommendations that I'll just summarize briefly here for you. All 14 recommendations are not going to be approached and undertaken in the 1920 school year. As an administrative team, we're going to identify some of the areas that we think are priority areas, one of them being a communications plan that looks at what is the procedure for internal communications, what is the procedure for communicating significant initiatives and big events all throughout the community, and let's set up a protocol for communication around crisis. If we can get that done in 1 year, that will be, really good. But I want to share all of the recommendations with you, and then we will look, in future years, we'll continue to have a goal around communications and look at how we will address that. So the first recommendation was that we, as a team, make a commitment that we're going to change the culture around communication. And that stems from knowing that we all can contribute in a positive way and that we all can strengthen this. Looking internally, and there's a lot that we can do internally, and that will be one area that we will be looking at. There's a feeling of disenfranchisement from support staff, particularly custodial staff and cafeteria staff, because they were identified in there that's where they work or the group with which they belong to. So looking at how do we decrease that feeling. I mentioned,
Maureen, I'm just curious, because like where I work, we also have staff like this. Do those staff members have email accounts from the district? Because they don't have computers. Like the rest of us work on computers, so they might not have access to information in the same way.
And that's exactly one of the points that was raised there, that which employee groups have email addresses, which do not. So even some who have email addresses, what kind of access do they have? Because they may not be in a classroom where there's a classroom computer or a teacher's computer. So there are some things. And I think that's what our consultant was saying, like there are a lot of things in here that that do not require a heavy lift in order to be able to address them. And that's one of those examples. We've already started with our first meeting, and we'll have a follow-up meeting, just looking at training, and communications, all that it involves. Looking at establishing some guidelines, and that's what I said would be part of a plan, right? So what are the guidelines that we use for communications? And then looking at what's the mini way we communicate when we've got a big initiative going on. And we started this past year, we issued 2 what we're calling information sheets. So we published the information sheet about our basis work, and we published the information sheet about the facilities work in Lynwood, the high school projects. And that would be an example there. So when we've got some key work, some pretty substantive work that's going on across the district, don't give it a little blurb in the email that we've started to send out. Give it its own publication so that people can even refer back to it over time. Look at some expectations. Now, you might say, well, earlier they said, that the communication between teachers, seems to be very, very strong. There's a lot of communication from teachers, but when asked about how things could improve, one teacher might be communicating about the party and the social event and the different opportunities for kids to be involved, and the teacher in the next classroom might be communicating about what's going on in the social studies curriculum and what the kids did in science this week. So could there be some, at least, recommendations for what to communicate? Looking at transitions between the buildings, specifically 5th grade into the middle school and middle school into the high school. Communication from and with the school board, and again, that referenced what's happening at meetings and how do people know about that, and how
Come to meetings.
and how can they find out more?
Open invitation.
And look at ways that we can strengthen our outreach to the Haverford community. What that references in particular is there were a few notations, even though the response rate was low, there were some suggestions in there that in our community, places like the public library, the CREC, and the Y may have been the third place, but are places where a lot of seniors convene, a lot of community members who may not have children in our schools utilize those entities within the township, and that they might be a good source to, put when we create something like our flyer about facility work and big projects, make sure that they have actually paper copies right there that people could pick up as they use that. To evaluate the use, and not quite sure how this one would be undertaken, so we're not going to pick it for the 1920 school year. But because it's a government channel, it's not our own TV station. This is the public access education channel, but evaluating the use of the district's cable access television channel. There's, time, just to give you one example, for every hour that we meet as a school board, times that by 2, that's how much time is required of Anna's day on the following Friday to get all that queued up so that it can go out in that medium as well. But we don't want to eliminate that because we don't know how many of either our seniors or people who don't have children in the schools may access it. So we have to try and learn a little bit more about that source and see if we can figure out how widely it is used. And then I mentioned the district website earlier, and to look at those communication gaps between the PTOs and parents and how they can get some more information in there. So as I said, that's really it. That's in a nutshell the 30-some pages that the board has received, and tomorrow morning will be on our website, and we will look at what are the things that we reasonably think we can address moving forward.
Questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Dr. Rishi.
You're welcome.
Okay. If anybody would like to skedaddle before we get into the business meeting, you're welcome to.
Yeah. Go get
Good luck.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck in
Thank
Texas.
you. Yeah, have a great
Go get 'em.
time. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you,
Welcome,
George.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Before I move on, can I just say how much I appreciate these staple-less staples on the paper? I don't know if
There
anyone
are
else
new
noticed that.
copiers.
Fabulous.
All right. Okay, item number 4, for information purposes only, the secretary to submit for insertion into the minutes, proof of publication as it relates to the 2019-2020 schedule of regular public board meeting. Item number 5, likewise, secretary to submit for insertion into the minutes, the financial report as of June 2019. Item number 6, I'll accept a motion to approve the official minutes from the June 27th, 2019 regular public board meeting.
Move.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, I'll accept the motion to approve disbursements from the following funds as listed.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, I'll accept the motion to accept the recommendation of the new Lynwood Elementary School project architect, KCBA and Associates, Inc., and owner's representative, CB Development Services, Inc., and authorized change orders as listed.
Moved.
Seconded.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, I'll accept a motion to approve resolution number 03-20-2D for Delaware County Community College for the purchase, financing, and construction of a major capital project to include the construction, equipping, and financing renovations to facilities to be purchased from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia on part of the land owned by the Archdiocese at 401 North Lansdowne Avenue, Drexel Hill, PA.
Moved.
Seconded.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
I just want to say I appreciate that this came back with the additional language in it at the last meeting. I had raised the point that when we heard the presentation that there was a matching fund from the state, and that had not previously been included in the resolution. So seeing that language in here that the the college wouldn't proceed with issuing the debt without the PDE approval to approve 50% of the debt is now specifically in there, so that, I appreciate that.
It's a roll call.
Any other questions?
How is this moving along around the county? Board's approving it?
I have not received any update from,
From the college?
no, not from the
Your peers?
college at all, or from my peers.
All of our questions have been answered, we're comfortable?
Yep, that was the last.
The timeliness of their response has been good?
Oh, yes, they had that to us, within a few days after the last meeting.
You might have missed when they came and did the presentation.
I did.
Yeah, it was really good. They did a really
was
nice
good,
job.
very professional.
Good renderings. It was nice.
You and Carlos have been talking?
Yep,
Great.
he's good.
Any other questions or comments? This is a roll call vote.
Dr. Allen Stuck,
Yes?
Ms. Colleen Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Fleischer,
Yes.
Ms. Larson,
Yes.
Ms. Minchie,
Yes.
Mr. Cinto,
Yes.
Ms. Wiedemann,
Yes.
Mr. Feinberg.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. Item number 10, I'll accept the motion to accept the recommendation of special counsel and authorize settlement of pending special education administrative proceedings for placement of special education students for 2019 ESY as listed below.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, I'll accept the motion to approve the changes to the schedule of regular public school board meetings for the months of October, April, and June.
Moved.
Seconded.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, I'll accept a motion to approve a professional services agreement with the Delaware County Intermediate Unit for 2019 extended school year specialist services not to exceed $4,560.
Moved.
Seconded.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13, the superintendent's report. Dr. Rushi?
Thank you, Mr. Feinberg. I ask you to accept the retirements that are noted in item number 1.
Move.
Seconded.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Can I just comment on Margie Ollinger, who I'm surprised it's 22 years. Margie started in our district, and she's one of those people that's in the tapestry of Haverford School District, but in the background. And a lot of people don't know her, but she came in as Jane Greenspun's right arm, and she's the one that started PIMS.
Yes.
And the number, and collecting children. At the time, I was in special ed, it was an amazingly complex job, and Margie handled it with aplomb. So I congratulate her on her retirement, and I thank her from all of us that were out front, that she helped make sure that we were doing the best job we could. So congratulations, Marge. And thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I ask you to approve the appointments that are listed in item 2A through 2I.
Moved. Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
It's good to see the bus drivers in training on there.
Yeah, that is. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And before moving on, one of those appointments this evening is the appointment of Rosemary Edmiston to the assistant principal position at our high school. She has joined us this evening, so we have an opportunity to.
I just wanted to thank you all for this great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
And we're looking forward to working with you. She's got a great background, experience at the high school level, as science teacher, good background in special ed. She's done a lot of work with the special ed kids and getting them all involved in Special Olympics and lots of good things. So we're looking for a terrific skill set that you're going to bring to us, and we're looking forward to learning from you as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm excited.
We have a little goodie bag, a little Haverford goodie bag for you, all right?
It's really smart to wear a turtleneck. It's freezing in here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And item 3, I ask you to approve the leave of absence that is described.
Moved. Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4, I ask you to approve the additional summer school personnel.
Moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Rushi. Board reports. Mr. Cinto.
Hi. On July 27th, I'll be attending the Pennsylvania School Boards Association Platform Committee meeting. And so I look forward to hopefully representing our district well there it's to review the legislative priorities for the 1920 session and the legislative principles. So I'm looking forward to attending, and I'll bring back some good stuff, hopefully.
Thanks for doing that.
No problem.
No report.
No report.
No report.
I got nothing. No report.
Ari?
No report.
First, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Bennett to I wasn't here the last time, so I'd like to welcome you as a
Thank
former parent of mine. She cares about the kids in our community, and we're happy to have her back. 2 things from the IU. It's a slow summer, but I wanted everyone to know that Dr. Maria Edelberg, the head of the Delaware County IU's contract, was renewed for another 5 years. So Maria will be with us in our community for 5 years, working hard. And number 2 is there is a retreat for IU board members this Sunday that I will be attending, where we will talk about the goals and our aspirations for next year.
It's a 5-year contract
It's a 5-year
extension,
contract.
typical in there?
I'm new to it. I don't know. They all seem to be very comfortable with it. So my assumption is yes. It wasn't an ask. It was, we had conversations about what Maria would like to see, and that was not an issue. So I guess it is. I'll ask.
Okay. I have no report.
Oh.
It's a miracle. Wow.
Quiet in Harrisburg. No one is safe while the legislature is in session. The board met in executive session prior to the public meeting to have an opportunity to review personnel issues, including appointments, retirements, and leaves of absence. The board also conferred with professional advisors regarding construction issues. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Have to move a second.